What's going on, everybody? Happy Thursday and welcome into our 2021 NFL mock draft special here on the MI6 Sports Network. Isaiah Leung joining you from lovely, sunny San Francisco Bay. Unfortunately, tonight, my co-host Sammy Sharp and Lorenzo Antonio could not be with us tonight, but that's all right as we have my guy Ryan Schriner joining me tonight on the show. Ryan, I hope you're having a great Thursday, my man. How's life, my guy?
Life's going really well. I can't tell you how much I love doing mock drafts, especially NFL mock drafts. It's one of my favorite things to do and like preparing for a show, that is, because it's just fun to theorize, try to piece everything together, figure out the team needs, who goes where, who fills what needs, trying to predict what the NFL GMs will do. It's a fun time of the year. Draft night's become one of my favorite sporting events of the whole sports year. So it's just a great time to be able to be here with you to predict the NFL draft. And of course, like all mock drafts, this will be completely wrong. But hey, that's the fun of it.
Yeah, and for my mock draft, I don't know about Ryan, but I know for me, I have a couple of explosive trades that are going to make you guys go like, "What? What did you just do?" But that's the fun of these mock drafts. We get to be GMs for a day and basically be the GM and picture what these guys are going to pick when they come up. But Ryan, actually, before we get into the sports content, I just want to go to the comments section. We had a lot of comments that flooded in. My guy, Shardo Gupta says, "Hi, Isaiah. What's going on, Shardo? I hope you're having a wonderful Thursday evening." Shardo also says, "I'm really excited for the 2021 NFL Draft." Shardo also says, "I would love to see Isaiah rage when he hears that the 49ers selected quarterback Mac Jones from Alabama at number
So do
3
we all. So
in the
do we all.
2021 NFL Draft." Like, I was going to say that, Ryan. I was going to say that I think right now, majority of the network and also majority of our fan base is rooting for the 49ers to draft Mac Jones at number 3 just to see me lose my head on our draft show on Thursday night.
I personally can't wait for it. It was like me rooting for the Warriors not to take LaMelo, and then when it didn't happen, it was just lovely. It was glorious. I'm really hoping for that again because it brings me immense joy. It's what gets me out of bed in the morning.
Ryan, I'll just say this. Watch or be wear what you wish for, because remember the last time you rooted for the Warriors to not select LaMelo Ball and make me lose my mind, the Cavs ended up drafting a player that you did not want and giving us a legendary reaction couple picks after that. So beware what you wish for, my man.
But the Cleveland Browns are run by smart people, unlike the Cavaliers, who are run by actual clowns, circus clowns, in fact. They're the traveling circus, in my opinion, because, my goodness, the Cavs just have no direction. But that's a topic for another day. We're NFL, where it's the best sport in Cleveland right now. Who knew that would be said like 5 years ago? But yes, I'm excited to talk about Cleveland's best sport, which is football.
Exactly, man. Who could have ever thought that 5 years ago that the Browns would be the best team in Cleveland right now? Also, Chardot says, how are the Oakland Athletics doing? Are they back on track? Yes, Chardot, they are. They are the hottest team right now in baseball. They won 11 in a row, and yesterday they won their game yesterday against the Twins in improbable fashion. It was a great game, probably the craziest game that I've ever worked in my career working for the Oakland A's. Callan says, "Hey, Leung, you're being watched." Callan, thank you so much for tuning in to our show tonight from your work and also MI6 Sports Network. I think this is Callan as well. He says, "Hi, Isaiah. This is Callan. I'm watching." Look, my guy Loro says, "Sup, guys? Hope to be back on WST next week. Can't wait to have you, Loro." And Christy Wilson says explosive trades. Yes, I guarantee you there will be a lot of explosive trades tonight. So make sure you guys have your popcorn and your shades out because it's going to be a very explosive and entertaining night. But Ryan, before we get into, the mock draft and, the explosive trades that we have on tonight's show, I just want to we've got some breaking news out of college basketball. Oh, Ryan, I don't know how to say this, but we have some very tragic news out of the college basketball world, and that is Terrence Clarke, the freshman phenom from the University of Kentucky. He was on his way to being a top pick in the upcoming NBA draft. According to CBS Sports, he has reportedly died in a tragic car accident this afternoon in Los Angeles. The guy passed away at the age of 19 years of age. Just very devastating news coming out of college basketball. What's your, initial reaction to this news of this passing of Terrence Clarke?
Simply this. That's just an absolute tragedy to see someone so young taken from the world. I mean, it doesn't get any sadder than that. And to also cherish life. Just going to keep it nice and short, but just absolute tragedy and cherish life.
Yeah, man, I completely agree with you. It's, a very devastating loss. It's a very tragic loss. This kid was one of the best shooting guards in the 2020 high school class. He was a five-star recruit. He was on his way to being one of the top picks in the upcoming NBA draft. And for him to be taken away from us just so young, man, 19 years of age is just – it's just devastating. And I'm just at a loss of words trying to comprehend what we just heard right now out of CBS Sports. But once again, Terrence Clarke, the Kentucky freshman phenom, passed away this afternoon at the age of 19 in a car accident in Los Angeles. But going into what you guys came here for, and that is our 2021 NFL mock draft, I'm going to give it to my guy, Ryan Schriner, to get us started on this 2021 NFL mock draft. Go ahead, Ryan.
All right, so some ground rules. We're going to try to move through this efficiently because this would be a very long show, hence why I'm hosting, because Isaiah, love you, but you can get on your rants and we be here 3 hours. So I'm here to move this process along. You'll see right now we've been sharing this blank screen with my name and Isaiah's name. When the pick is made, and we'll each announce our own picks, we will show the name of the person selected, and it won't be explicitly stated, but we'll announce any trades or anything like that. So yeah, without any further ado, let's get into this, and hope you guys aren't too disappointed in Isaiah's mock draft, because I guarantee you there'll be some head scratching moments for sure. But let's get started. So I will go first, and with the first pick in the NFL draft, the Jacksonville Jaguars will select Trevor Lawrence. I really don't need to say any more. So Isaiah, your turn to make your selection.
Well, Ryan, I got to agree with you. My first pick in the 2021 NFL draft, I got the Jacksonville Jaguars drafting Trevor Lawrence out of Clemson. This is a no-brainer. Even with all the delusional stuff that I spew on the air, I can't even make a reason that the Jaguars will not draft Trevor Lawrence. This is a no-brainer. Trevor Lawrence will be the number one pick for the Jacksonville Jaguars, hence why Urban Meyer, their new head coach, took the job with the Jaguars, and also why he hasn't attended Zach Wilson's pro day. He didn't attend Justin Fields' pro day. He didn't attend Trey Lance's pro day. Trevor Lawrence is going to be the guy in Jacksonville.
Yeah, surefire number one pick, no debate there. And then we get to the second selection of the NFL draft, and I have the New York Jets taking Zach Wilson from BYU. There's some rumors that since they attended Justin Fields' pro day, that they may be looking towards Justin Fields, but I just think that's them doing their due diligence. It's been Zach Wilson number 2 for a while. And I find it ironic because the person I would compare him to is Sam Darnold. So that's kind of a little bit of irony that the Jets are taking him. But I feel like picks number 1 and 2 are a lock, and the draft will truly start at the 3rd overall selection. But Isaiah, your turn for the number 2 pick.
All right, with the number 2 pick, I've got the New York Jets taking Ohio State quarterback Justin Fields at number 2 and sending a shock to the world with that pick. And the reason why is I've been saying this on various programs that we've had here on the network. I think that the Jets are truly interested in Justin Fields. I think that this narrative the media puts out that it's a lock, Zach Wilson's going number 2, I think that's false because, like I said, I know, Ryan, you said that they were doing their due diligence, but if it's a lock, then why are you even doing your due diligence? Just like, Trevor Lawrence, Urban Meyer, he knows that Trevor Lawrence is going to be his guy. He didn't even go to Zach Wilson's pro day. He didn't even go to Trey Lance's pro day. He didn't even go to Justin Fields' pro day. And I think, Robert Saleh, he was with Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco, and they worked with Justin Fields back when Justin Fields was, I believe, 17 years of age. Robert Saleh, Mike LaFleur, their offensive coordinator, they both were at that camp that Kyle Shanahan and his dad, Mike Shanahan, runs called Quarterback Collective. They were at that camp, and so was Justin Fields. There was a previous relationship there. I just think that with that previous relationship, the familiarity that these guys have with Justin Fields, I think that it's a no-brainer. Justin Fields goes number 2 to the New York Jets, and I think that Justin Fields, he's going to be a hell of a quarterback for the New York Jets.
All right, I'm going to spell the actual truth of why Isaiah made this selection. It's not that I hate Justin Fields. I love Justin Fields. I'm an Ohio State fan. I think he's going to make a pretty good NFL quarterback. Like I've said before, I think he needs some time to develop. He goes through progressions well, but sometimes hangs a little too long. So I think all he needs is just a little bit of time to be a great NFL quarterback. But Isaiah, you only made that selection because you want the 49ers to get Zach Wilson of BYU. And I haven't looked at your mock draft, but spoiler alert, I'm going to guess Zach Wilson to the 49ers. So our audience, I just want to let you know, this is just wishful thinking by Isaiah. I guarantee you, hook him up to a lie detector. He thinks Zach Wilson's going second overall. This is just wishful thinking by Isaiah. But with that, I'll get into the 3rd selection. And this is a special one because this is dealing with one of our 2 teams, the 49ers, Isaiah's team. So with that, I announced that the 3rd overall pick in the draft of the 49ers is Justin Fields of Ohio State. Everyone is saying Mac Wilson. There was a tweet by, I think, NBC or one of the NFL reporters that said 98% of teams believe that Mac Wilson will be taken by the 49ers. I don't buy that for a second because why would you trade all those picks to move up to number 3 to take Mac Jones? Or was I saying Mac Jones, Isaiah?
No, you were saying Mac Wilson.
Oh, geez, I apologize. Yes, Mac Jones. Thank you, Isaiah. But yes, I don't buy that the 49ers traded up to select Mac or Matt Jones. And here's the very simple reason as to why. They had Jimmy Garoppolo. Mac Jones' ceiling is Jimmy Garoppolo. If you're going to move that far up, you're going to take a guy that has potential to be something special. Justin Fields fits that role, and Trey Lance fits that role. Mac Jones has a very low ceiling, in my opinion, and honestly, his floor is just as, or a very, yeah, he has a very low ceiling, and his floor is just as low as the other guys. So I don't buy this for a second. He was a mid-round pick at best, like a couple months ago. Where this rise came from, with no football being played, is beyond me. I think it's a smokescreen. So Mac Jones, I was saying it incorrect earlier. My apologies, but Mac Jones will not be the selection here. It will be Justin Fields of Ohio State. And if not Justin Fields, it'll be Trey Lance. But, or if it's not going to be Justin Fields, it's going to be Trey Lance. Mac Jones is not an option here, in my opinion.
All right, Ryan, with the number 3 pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, my San Francisco 49ers will select the guy that I've wanted ever since I first watched him play 2 years ago against USC, and that is Zach Wilson, the quarterback out of BYU. I love this kid from the very beginning. When I first watched him play against USC, I fell in love with him, his ability to scramble and make plays on the run and make plays with his feet. He is special, man. He is special. I've been a fan of this kid before everybody jumped on the Zach Wilson bandwagon. I think he's going to be special in the league. I think he's going to be special in Kyle Shanahan's offense, and I think that he will take Kyle Shanahan's offense to another dimension. Now, if you look at the quarterbacks that Kyle Shanahan has had, they are all pocket passers that have limited mobility. Zach Wilson, he's a good pocket passer, plus he's got great mobility. Imagine what the plays that Kyle Shanahan can scheme up with Zach Wilson's arm and also using Zach Wilson's legs. The possibilities are endless, Ryan. Give me Zach Wilson to my San Francisco 49ers, and a month later, this jersey that has number 4 and Mullins on it will be turned into a Wilson number 4.
Like I said, wishful thinking, because he's going to the New York Jets. You need to accept that. But with that, let's go to the 4th overall selection. And this is going to be my first mock trade of the day. I have the Dallas Cowboys trading up to the 4th overall selection. So a trade with the Atlanta Falcons that gives the Dallas Cowboys the 4th overall pick. And with that selection, they take Kyle Pitts, tight end out of Florida. And here's why. I've heard plenty of stories of how Jerry Jones really likes Kyle Pitts. And yes, the Cowboys have incredible needs in the defensive side of the ball. Their defense was atrocious. But Jerry Jones is an bitter old man who doesn't care what you think and likes flashy players. That's why he drafted CeeDee Lamb last year when he had much more pressing needs, and he's going to do it again this year. I don't know how much he's going to give up, but I bet you anything they trade up to get Kyle Pitts, because Jerry Jones likes his flashy players, and this would be an extremely flashy player to get, because at the end of the day, Kyle Pitts is one of the best tight end prospects we've ever seen. He has graded insanely high by Pro Football Focus. I think may have been the highest graded player in the country and may be the best football player, regardless of position, in this draft. So Kyle Pitts is a selection here. I personally wouldn't like this if I was a Cowboys fan, because they definitely need help on the defensive end. So trading up and giving up picks that could be used to help reinforce the defense is not a good idea, in my opinion. But I base my mock draft on what I think will happen. And to me, I just think Jerry Jones, the senile old man, is just going to go for the player he likes, regardless if it's the smart choice.
And Christy Wilson says in our comment section, "What? Ryan, are you serious?" Yes, Ryan Schriner just picked or predicted that the Cowboys would trade up with the Atlanta Falcons to draft Kyle Pitts, the tight end out of Florida. But Ryan, I've got Kyle Pitts going number 4 as well, just like you. But I got him going to the Atlanta Falcons. And the reason why is because Atlanta's head coach, their new head coach, Arthur Smith, is reportedly infatuated with Kyle Pitts. And he has been thinking about the ways that he can use Kyle Pitts both as a blocker and a receiver in his offense. And I know a lot of people are going to be like, but Isaiah, Atlanta, they need to rebuild. They are a team that is always denying that they need to rebuild. I get that, okay? The last 3 seasons for the Falcons have been awful, but you still have Matt Ryan under contract for at least the next 2 years. You can get a quarterback next year. There's a gazillion top quarterbacks that are going to be coming out next year. Keaton Slovis, Sam Howell, the quarterback out of North Carolina, JT Daniels from Georgia, to name a few. You can get your quarterback next year. You don't have to settle for one of the leftover quarterbacks that the 49ers, the Jaguars, the Jets don't pick. Go get Kyle Pitts. He's a guy that has tremendous hands, is a tremendous receiver. He can block pretty good as well. You can add him and give Matt Ryan another weapon that he can work with. And then you can go and get your quarterback next year. Or if you like a Kyle Trask or a Kellen Mond or a Davis Mills, you can get them later on in the draft. But I just think Kyle Pitts, you just can't pass him up if he's available to you at number 4 if you're Atlanta.
I'll say not the worst pick for Atlanta. I personally would like it more if I was an Atlanta fan if they traded down to get more picks to help out with the defense. But, this would be a good selection. I agree with you. I think it'd be a mistake if they went quarterback now. Later is the time to make a first-round selection at QB. But with that, the next pick is the Cincinnati Bengals. And with this selection, I have them taking Jamar Chase, wide receiver out of LSU. And again, this is not what I would personally do if I was the Bengals. This is what I think the Bengals will do. Because if we know anything, the Bengals are incompetent. They hear that Joe Burrow likes Jamar Chase. They're good friends at LSU. And reports are he's lobbying for the Bengals to take him. But I hate this pick for one reason. Joe Burrow needs to be kept, alive. He needs to have a long football career, and he won't have that if the offensive line, which resembles like a saloon door, just letting everyone pass and just having Joe Burrow getting killed in the pocket, they need to draft offensive linemen. I think this pick would be a mistake, but again, I think this is what they will do because they're 1, incompetent, and 2, their star player. The only good thing they have right now is requesting this player. And while Jamar Chase will be a fantastic player, he's just not what the Bengals need right now. And this would be a huge mistake by the Bengals, but I think that's what they're going to do.
Ryan, I have a feeling that you may be right in that pick, and that the Bengals will go with Jamar Chase because their star quarterback Joe Burrow is wanting the team to draft Jamar Chase because they have a connection from their days at LSU. And also Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, they were roommates, I believe, at LSU. They have a connection. But I'm looking out for Joe Burrow. I am looking out for his health, and I really hope and pray that the Cincinnati Bengals listen to me instead of listening to Joe Burrow. Because if they don't, everybody in that organization that is running the football personnel department, that is running what's going on the field, they should be fired if they listen to Joe Burrow and pick Jamar Chase instead of picking an offensive lineman when Joe Burrow got hit a gazillion times last season and ultimately his season ended early because of a torn ACL. I got the Bengals drafting Rashawn Slater out of Northwestern. Rashawn Slater, he's 6'4", 315 pounds. The guy has the potential to be a Pro Bowl caliber player and an All-Pro candidate. He's a perfect fit for a outside zone, heavy rushing attack that I think that Zach Taylor likes to run in Cincinnati. He's also a great fit for a West Coast scheme that Zach Taylor runs in Cincinnati. He's a guy that can run. He can pass block very well. He is a great run blocker as well. And I think that Cincinnati, Zach Taylor, he runs the same type of scheme that Sean McVay runs in Los Angeles with the Rams, which is they like to run the ball heavily and then use the running game to set up the play action game. And I think that Rashawn Slater would be a great fit and would help the Bengals. Would really help the Bengals when it comes to the running game and give Joe Mixon more wide open lanes to run through.
I like the idea of the selection. I hate who you selected because not only is the top tackle in this class very obvious, it's one of the more highly rated or ranked offensive tackles the draft has seen in a few years. I mean, for goodness sake, Sewell, tackle out of where'd he go? Oh, Oregon, was given the highest grades in PFF history as a true sophomore. He sat out last year, but that skill doesn't go away. He was graded 6th overall for tackles as a freshman and graded 1st overall with the highest grade ever as a true sophomore, and he'll only get better from there. So with that being said, my selection of the Miami Dolphins is Sewell, tackle out of Oregon, for all the reasons I listed. He's one of the most highly hyped tackles that the draft has seen in quite a while. This would be the selection the Bengals should make, but I don't think they will. And it's to the Dolphins' benefit because they need to give Tua the best chance possible. And giving him one of the best tackles to come out of the draft in a long time, that's a pretty darn good way to make sure that Tua has the best shot possible to be their long-term QB.
I get the pick, Ryan, but for me, I got the Dolphins drafting Tua Tagovailoa's former teammate at Alabama in Devontae Smith. Devontae Smith, I think, is the best receiver out of this draft. He's a guy that, even though, he's thin and he's not that tall, the guy, I believe, is 6'1", 175 pounds. So he's got to bulk up when he does, in fact, go to the NFL. But this guy is a natural wide receiver. He's a great playmaker. He's a phenomenal route runner. He's explosive out of cuts. He's a guy that has big play speed. He's elusive in the open field. He's also has great hands. He can make those leaping catches on those 50-50 balls. I compare this guy to Anquan Boldin, Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs, and those three guys put into one player. That is what Devontae Smith is. And, Tua Tagovailoa, he doesn't really have that much weapons at his disposal in Miami. And I think that if he gets Devontae Smith, a player that he's familiar with, he has a connection with Devontae Smith from their days at Alabama. He knows what Devontae Smith can do. Devontae Smith will help this Dolphins offense a lot with the ability to stretch the field, the ability to, make the short intermediate throws and turn into big plays. I just think that it's a perfect fit and it's a no-brainer for the Miami Dolphins. And I think it's why the Miami Dolphins traded up with the Philadelphia Eagles after getting the 12th pick with the 49ers. They traded up with the Eagles to get that 6th pick is because they've been eyeing Devontae Smith all along in this draft.
I could not disagree more. The Dolphins are a smart organization, and smart organizations know that giving your quarterback a good offensive line is better than giving him top-tier wide receivers. So while I do like Devontae Smith, I think he is a much improved version of Jerry Jeudy, in my opinion. I just have to go with Sewell out of Oregon because the Dolphins are a small organization, unlike the Bengals, and they know the best way to give your young QB a chance is to give him a good offensive line. But moving on with my next selection. Oh, go ahead.
I just wanted to read one of our comments real quick. Austin Morrison chimes in. He says that Alabama has pretty much an NFL strength and conditioning staff. I don't see Devontae Smith getting much bigger in the NFL.
That may be a very good point, but even at his current weight, he dominated college football. I mean, my Ohio State Buckeyes were just being destroyed by Devontae Smith. He would have put up historic numbers if he didn't get injured early in the second half. I mean, there was nothing we could do to stop him. So I have faith, even if he doesn't gain too much weight, he'll be A-okay. But with my next selection, I have another trade to announce. And with the 7th overall pick, the Detroit Lions will trade their pick to the New England Patriots. Now, hear me out. Everyone's thinking, "Oh, the Patriots don't trade up. They're not this aggressive in drafts. They normally trade down." Well, guess what? Before this year, they didn't spend big money in free agency, so everything's out the window clearly. So, with this selection, they trade up to 7, and they will select Trey Lance, quarterback out of North Dakota State. Now, a lot of people are projecting Mac Jones. Yeah, Mac Jones. I'm going to make sure I get his name right for the rest of the show. A lot of people think Mac Jones will be the selection here. And here's why I disagree. They went through 20 years of Tom Brady. Now, Tom Brady's the greatest quarterback of all time. No disputing that. But there's one thing that the GOAT can't do. He can't run. And what I think the Patriots want to do, they want to open up the offense. They want the running element involved in their offense. It's why they went out and got Cam Newton, and they used him a lot in the run game. So I think Josh McDaniels and the Patriots offense really want to open up the QB run game. So a lot of sports networks are saying, "Oh, they get Mac Jones." Out of all the QBs though that would be available, he's the most like Tom Brady, I guess, in that he's not athletic. But I think they want to turn a new leaf. I think they want to change in the type of quarterback that runs their system. And Trey Lance can sit behind Cam Newton for a year, learn from someone whose play style he could mimic and have success at the NFL level. He's not nearly as big as Cam Newton. He's not nearly the runner that Cam Newton will be. But the play style, athletic ability is sort of similar. So I can see this being the obvious selection for the Patriots because I think they are going to be aggressive because, again, they spent so much money in free agency, and Bill Belichick is desperate to win the breakup. So they will be aggressive, and they'll get the guy that has much higher potential, and that's Trey Lance.
Ryan, for me, I got Trey Lance going number 7 as well, but I got him going to the Detroit Lions and going to the Motor City. You know, this is a perfect situation for Trey Lance because Detroit right now, they have Jared Goff. Jared Goff, I believe, he's under contract for the next 3 seasons, but he's easily movable. So Detroit could deem him or could deem Trey Lance to be ready after this season, and then they could put him in. But they could also deem him unready after this season, and they could let him develop some more. So he could potentially sit on the bench and develop for 1 or 2 seasons, and it would be perfect because Detroit has a quarterback that is pretty good in the NFL. He might not be the best quarterback or the greatest quarterback in the world, but Jared Goff is still a serviceable quarterback in the NFL. And I think that, Trey Lance can learn a lot from Jared Goff. He can sit, he can develop for 1 or 2 years, get his mechanics right, and learn the offense. And then I think he would be perfect, or he will be definitely dynamic in the NFL. It's a perfect opportunity for him, and I think it's a perfect opportunity for the Detroit Lions as well.
I could definitely see that being the selection because I agree with you. Jared Goff is not the best quarterback in the world, but you can afford to sit him for a year if need be, or bring him in whenever he's ready. So I really like this pick, but I think the Detroit Lions will elect to trade down, accrue more picks, and then try to address their QB of the future in a year or two when they're out of the huge contract that is Jared Goff. But with my with the eighth overall pick in the draft, I have another trade and Isaiah. This is my no one saw this coming pick or no one saw this coming trade because there's always one. And I tried my best to predict this one. I thought of a few teams. I thought of Washington. I was close to picking Washington here, but I didn't go Washington. I had a couple others, but at the end of the day, the team that felt right and the team that I think could make a big move is the Chicago Bears trading up to the eighth overall spot to select Mac Jones out of Alabama. Now, let me explain my reasoning why. And my reason for making this selection was one tweet when they had Andy Dalton's picture and just had the caption QB1. I saw that as like, do you really think he's QB1? Are you just trying to convince people that you are going to go with him to kind of hide or create a little bit of a smoke screen to cover up you working a potential trade to trade up to take one of the best QBs available? Because Chicago for so long has just taken bargain bin options. They went out and got Nick Foles in free agency, or they traded for Nick Foles, and now expect that they're going to do that again with Andy Dalton. If they want to keep their jobs, they got to make a bold move, and trading up to draft a QB buys you at least a couple more years at your job. I don't think this will work out, but I think the Bears are desperate, and I think this will be the move they make to try to keep their jobs for the GM and the head coach, Matt Nagy.
Ryan, I really truly wish that Callan was here right now with us to see his reaction because I know that he's a big Bears fan, and I don't know what he would think about the Bears trading up to
Oh,
number.
this would be a terrible pick by the or terrible
Oh,
decision by the Bears. I think that, but I just think this will happen.
oh,
Again,
exactly.
I just have to reiterate, this is not what I want to happen or what I think are good ideas. This is just me trying my best to predict it because I don't want to be associated with this pick because this would be terrible for the Chicago Bears, but I think they're just too desperate and they have to trade to eighth to get ahead of the Broncos, who I would have had taken Mac Jones if he was still available.
Well, Ryan, that pick would be really terrible. Anybody that drafts Mac Jones in the top 10 should be fired immediately because that guy is not a top 10 pick. He was so successful at Alabama because he had so many great weapons at his disposal. I mean, he had an offensive line that literally gave him 10 minutes to throw the football, and he had receivers that you just, throw short passes to, and they can make it a 70-yard gain. I mean, that's how dynamic that Alabama offense was. And not to mention, he had one of the best play callers at his disposal in Steve Sarkisian, who's now the head coach at Texas. So he had everything going right for him. But Ryan, for me, with the Panthers pick at number 8, I'm picking that the Panthers will draft Jamar Chase, the wide receiver out of LSU. And the reason why I'm saying that is because Joe Brady, the offensive coordinator of the Carolina Panthers, he was the offensive coordinator of LSU when they had that record-breaking year last season or in 2019. And Joe Brady Him and Jamar Chase, they have a strong relationship from their days at LSU. Joe Brady, if you look at the stats, Jamar Chase, his first couple of years in college football, he wasn't really that good. But all of a sudden, he had that monster season. Why? Because he thrived in Joe Brady's offense. The Panthers need a receiver. They need weapons for Sam Darnold. Joe Brady knows Jamar Chase. It's a perfect situation for both Jamar Chase and the Carolina Panthers.
I agree. This pick makes a lot of sense for the reasons you gave. The connections there from their college days, or when Joe Brady was the offensive coordinator for the LSU. So it makes sense, but I just don't think Jamar Chase will be there when they make that selection. So I just don't think it's going to be an option for them. But with the 9th overall pick in the NFL draft, I have the Denver Broncos taking the offensive tackle out of Virginia Tech. Now, a lot of people are expecting Slater, the offensive tackle out of Northwestern. But in my research, I found that, one second here, I found that Christian was graded the second highest tackle this year across college football. And Slater graded very well his sophomore year, but didn't play this year. So to me, it's kind of close. And I think the Denver Broncos will go with the guy that played this year and that they have more tape of, or more recent tape of. And that will be the deciding factor, because the Denver Broncos are taking a tackle here. They desperately need a right tackle, and they're going to fill that need right here. And I don't think you can go wrong. I think both Christian and Slater are going to be fantastic offensive tackles. I just think they go with Christian because he played more recently, and when both of their most recent years were graded extremely highly. So I'm going to go with the guy that played recently and that they have more recent tape on, because I think it makes it a slightly safer pick, I guess. So that's who I have the Denver Broncos selecting.
Wow, Ryan, I can't believe you made that pick. I think right now I have Christian Darrisaw, the tackle out of Virginia Tech. I'm looking at my mock draft right now, and honestly, I don't even have him going in round one, to be honest with you. So that's kind of a shocking pick for me, at least. But for my number 9th pick, yeah, the Denver Broncos number 9th pick, I have my first trade of the night. And folks, this is a very, very explosive trade. So get ready for this. But I've got the Denver Broncos trading a massive package to the Houston Texans for Deshaun Watson, and getting Deshaun Watson out of Houston and getting Denver their franchise quarterback. John Elway and crew have been looking for their franchise quarterback ever since Peyton Manning retired back in 2016. They've got unlucky, or they misfired with Paxton Lynch. They missed on Brock Osweiler. They missed on Trevor Siemian. They missed on Case Keenum. And it looks like they missed on Drew Lock. And John Elway and Vic Fangio, they both know that Vic Fangio, they need to have a winning season this year, because Vic Fangio, if he doesn't, he's out of a job in Denver. So they need to be aggressive. They need to win now. And I think Houston, a couple of months ago, if you asked me if Houston was going to trade Deshaun Watson, I probably would have told you no. But after seeing what's transpired with the lawsuits and the 23 women that have sued Deshaun Watson, I think that Houston wants to get rid of that and get rid of that PR mess that's going on with Deshaun Watson. And I think that they've seen that all these teams that were suitors for Deshaun Watson, all those teams that were the suitors for Deshaun Watson, they have quietly exited out of the Deshaun Watson sweepstakes. there's only one team, in my opinion, that is left in the Deshaun Watson sweepstakes, and I think that's the Denver Broncos. And I don't believe the Denver Broncos will have to give up that massive haul that you would have had to give up 3 months ago. I think a first round pick or 2 first round picks and maybe a second round pick will allow for that deal to happen. I got the Broncos trading for Deshaun Watson. The Texans get the number 9th pick. And with that number 9th pick, I got the Houston Texans drafting Mac Jones out of Alabama. And I think it makes sense because Nick Caserio, their new GM, he came from New England. Mac Jones is seen as a prototypical Patriots quarterback with his ability to game manage. And Nick Caserio, like I said earlier, he came from New England. I think he wants that kind of quarterback in New England. And he also was coached by Nick Saban at Alabama, who Bill Belichick has a great relationship with. Nick Caserio has a great relationship with. They always draft a lot of Alabama players. I think that continues here. I think Mac Jones goes to Houston to replace Deshaun Watson, and Denver and my guy John Alcorn gets his franchise quarterback in Deshaun Watson.
I just don't see this happening because there's just too much legal proceedings that need to be done to make a move this big on draft night. I just think this timetable is too accelerated. If a trade happens, it would definitely be after the draft, in my opinion. So that's why I personally don't think this will happen. And I think Denver, who's had a very good offseason, in my opinion, will take the safe pick and get their right tackle of the future. But with that, the 10th overall selection in the NFL draft, in my mock draft, has the Atlanta Falcons selecting due to the trade earlier. So with the 10th overall selection, the Atlanta Falcons will take Patrick Surtain out of Alabama, cornerback out of Alabama. And here's why. Falcons need help on the defensive end. They drafted a cornerback last year, but with Surtain still on the boards, is said to be the best defensive player in this draft, and it fills a need for the Atlanta Falcons. I believe in their minds, it'll give them their 2 cornerbacks of the future. And this just makes too much sense because the Falcons, they desperately need help on the defensive ends. I think edge defender would be their most pressing needs. But I don't think they can draft an edge defender this high. I don't think any are talented enough. So they'll go and try to fill their second biggest need, which is secondary. And with that, they'll take Patrick Surtain.
I understand the choice for that, Ryan. I think that that's a very logical pick for Atlanta because they do need a lot of help on that defense. But before I get into my pick, I just want to address this comment right now from my guy, Shardul Gupta. He's got the Patriots trading up to 7 to draft Kellen Mond out of Texas A&M. And Shardul, before you go, Ryan, let me just say this. You guys remember a couple of years back when Daniel Jones, who was projected by many to go late in the first round, got drafted at number 6. You guys saw that reaction all over Twitter, all over social media, and even at the New York Giants watch party at MetLife Stadium. All the fans were like, "What? What did you guys do?" Or they were just pretty much just booing him when they heard that selection. If the Patriots make that selection, not only on draft night next week Thursday, by the way, tune into our draft show next week Thursday, starting at 5 p.m. Pacific time, 8 p.m. Eastern. But not only will I be laughing my head off on that draft show, laughing at my guy Shriner, if the Patriots make that move to trade up for Kellen Mond, who's projected by many to go mid-second round to late second round. But if this happens, you can bet that the Patriots, every Patriots fan will be going to Patriots headquarters demanding Bill Belichick to be fired, because that would probably be the most dumbest pick that I've ever seen in my life covering the NFL draft.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. If Bill Belichick makes this trade and then selects Kellen Mond, put him in a retirement home immediately.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that, Ryan. Not even fire him. Just put him in a retirement home and, send him off into retirement because he's clearly losing his mind. But my 10th pick is the Dallas Cowboys, and I've got Christie's Dallas Cowboys drafting a big surprise, and that is Gregory Rousseau, the defensive end out of Miami. I think that's how you say his name. Gregory Rousseau. Last season, he was second in all of college football with 15 and a half sacks. This guy has a tremendous motor. This guy has tremendous pass rushing skills. The Dallas Cowboys, they need to improve that defense, and they need to improve that defensive line. They need to improve the linebacking core. They need to improve their secondary. Gregory Rousseau, I think Jerry Jones and the Cowboys, they can take a page out of the 49ers playbook from a couple of years ago, in which the 49ers, they invested heavily in their defensive line, and they had a weak secondary and a good linebacking core. They bet on the fact that if our pass rushers can get to the quarterback and make the quarterback have to release the ball quickly than they want to, then our secondary, they won't have to really do that much because the ball will be coming out quickly, and the quarterback will be getting heavily pressured, and our secondary members will be able to come around and either pick those passes off or knock it down because the quarterback won't have time to throw the football. I think that's what the Dallas Cowboys should do. Invest in your defensive line because defensive line is what wins in the NFL. And I've got Gregory Rousseau, who had a tremendous season last year at Miami. He's a game wrecker. I got him going to Dallas at number 10.
All right, and with the top 10, we're going to speed it up a little bit so we get through all the picks in a timely fashion. But to that point, I disagree with that. He's ranked 37th. No. Yeah, 37th by Pro Football Focus. He had 15 and a half sacks, but I saw a stat that said 50% of his pressures came from blown assignments on the offensive line where he just wasn't touched. And he also had a overall grade in 2019 of 76.2. That ranked 128th in all of college football. I think he had good stats, but I don't think he'll live up to those stats at the NFL level. So I think it would be a mistake to take him this high. But with my 11th overall selection in the NFL draft, I have the New York Giants selecting Jalen Waddle out of Alabama for one simple reason. Yes, the Giants have much higher needs in wide receiver, considering they went out and got Golladay. But all the moves this offseason by the Giants have been to give Daniel Jones the best chance to succeed. If Daniel Jones fails, then Gettleman's out at GM. So he is doing everything in his power to give him, Daniel Jones that is, the best possible chance to succeed. And this falls right in line with that thinking. So while I personally think they have much more pressing needs in wide receiver after signing Golladay, this would be the selection simply to try to make Daniel Jones look like a top 15 quarterback at the NFL level.
I understand the logic behind that pick, Ryan, but I got to disagree. For me, I got the New York Giants drafting Penei Sewell at number 11 out of Oregon. Like you said, he's one of the best tackles available in this draft. And the New York Giants, they have an abundance of wide receivers. They got Golladay. They got a bunch of other guys as well. They also have Ryan, who's that tight end? I'm forgetting his name right now.
Their Pro Bowl tight end, Evan Ingram, who doesn't have a set of hands to catch a football. Yeah, I know him.
Yeah, Evan Ingram. They need to improve their offensive line to give Daniel Jones time to throw the football. And also, they need to improve that offensive line to give Saquon Barkley and their running backs more time or a bigger lane to run the football with, because Jason Garrett, if you watch his offense, he likes to run a very conservative offense that has the Giants running the football majority of the time. I think Penei Sewell, who's a great run blocker, he's a good pass blocker as well. I think if he's on the board at number 11, the Giants, they would be absolutely stupid not to take him at number 11.
I completely agree, which is why he won't be at number 11. He'll be taken way before that. So, yes, if he's still available, that's the pick for the Giants to make, but he will not be available. And with that, we go to the 12th overall pick of the NFL draft. And I have the Philadelphia Eagles selecting Parsons, linebacker out of Penn State. He opted out this year, but graded insanely high by Pro Football Focus. I believe he was graded his sophomore year as the best overall linebacker with a grade of 91.6. Extremely athletic. Sat out this year because he knew he was going to be a first-round pick. And while the Eagles' most pressing need is still wide receiver, I think they'll take the better player in their eyes in Parsons, because they spent a first-round pick on a wide receiver last year. And if you do that this year, you're kind of admitting that your first-round pick last year was a mistake. So I don't think they'll do that. I think they will draft wide receiver. It'll just be in the second round or later.
Ryan, for me, I got them going defense as well, but I got them going with the best player available on the board in the BPA, and that is Patrick Surtain, the cornerback out of Alabama. This guy has great hands. This guy has great feel for the football. He's got a great nose for the football as well. This guy is just an excellent corner. I think he's going to be out of this class. I think he's going to be the best corner in this class. He's a tremendous defender as well. And, I know there's been several busts from Nick Saban's class of cornerbacks that he always pumps out at Alabama, but a lot of them are solid corners to great corners. So I just like Surtain. He's played, in the SEC, the conference. I know Ryan is probably going to disagree with me, and other people of our network are going to disagree with me, but I think the SEC is the closest simulation to the NFL level of football. And I think that, having played in the SEC, I think having gone up against the Jamar Chases of the world and other top receivers in the SEC, I think it makes him the most NFL ready out of all the other corners in the NFL draft.
Makes sense. If he is available, I would be ecstatic at this selection if I was a Philadelphia Eagles fan, which I don't know if I told you this, but I claimed them as my second team. I had family from Philadelphia, so I'm obviously a Browns fan first and foremost. Nothing else matters. But if you had to say who's your second favorite team, not even a fan, but it'd be the Eagles. They'd be my backup plan if I couldn't be a Browns fan anymore. So just a little fun trivia there. But with the 13th overall pick, I had the Chargers staying put, and I had them selecting Slater, offensive tackle out of Northwestern. And Chargers fans should be crying for joy if they make this selection, because Slater is probably the second best scout on a majority of boards for NFL GMs, and maybe possibly could be number one on a couple draft boards. I think it's very few, because I do think Sewell is the best offensive tackle prospect in this class by a long shot. But this should be a very good selection because they don't have to move up, and they get more protection for Justin Herbert, who had a great rookie year despite being pressured a lot. And that's what made Justin Herbert a fantastic quarterback last year. He excelled when being pressured. So just imagine him without being pressured nearly as much. I think this is a home run pick for the Chargers.
I got the Chargers going offensive line as well, Ryan, because they need to protect Justin Herbert. They've already got a lot of weapons. Their defense is pretty solid with Joey Bosa leading that defense. So I got the Chargers at number 13. drafting the hometown kid, and that is Elijah Vera Tucker, the offensive lineman out of USC. He's very versatile. He can play left tackle. He can play right tackle. He can even slide into guard and play guard as well. You can put him anywhere on that offensive line, and he will succeed. He's a good run blocker as well as a great pass blocker as well. This is the move I think the Chargers need to make. I know a lot of mock drafts and everybody out there say that he's probably like the fourth best offensive lineman in this draft, but I watched him at USC. The guy was an absolute stud at USC, protecting Keaton Slovis's blind side. That's why Keaton Slovis had a lot of time to throw the football at USC. I just think that Elijah Vera Tucker, if the Chargers manage to keep him at home, it will be a great bet for the LA Chargers.
I personally disagree with taking him before Christian Darshaw, I think how you pronounce his name, out of Virginia Tech, because with Christian, you know he's going to be a tackle at the NFL level. I don't know. People are saying that Tucker may be a guard. Some say tackle. That uncertainty is not a great sign this high up on the draft board, maybe later in the first round. And also if the team also desperately needed a guards. But if you just desperately need a tackle, like I think the Chargers do, you go with a more surefire tackle at the NFL level. But with that, I have the 14th overall selection going to the Vikings. Oh, wait, no, that's the original spot. My apologies. So with the 14th pick, the Vikings select Trayvon, safety out of TCU, for this simple reason. Yes, they have Harrison, I believe. Is that the name of their current safety?
Harrison Smith, I believe, is their current safety.
Yes, Harrison Smith. And they lost their other safety in free agency to the Eagles. So I see them needing help on the defensive end, obviously, because the Vikings defense was really bad last year. You just lost a really good safety. So I see this as just a replacement selection. I don't think he's the best overall defensive player on the board, but I think secondary, especially safety with the departure of Harris, I think this pick just makes too much sense.
Ryan, for me at number 14, I've actually have a trade, which is I think my second trade of the night, and I've got Martin Garcia's Las Vegas Raiders trading with the Minnesota Vikings and acquiring the 14th pick and drafting Micah Parsons out of Penn State. I think this is a very logical move for the Raiders because they see Micah Parsons, best linebacker in this draft, available. They have to go and get him because the Raiders have one of the weakest linebacking corps in the NFL. In fact, their entire defense is pretty weak, but their linebacking corps is extremely weak. They gotta go and get Micah Parsons if he's indeed available. I got John Gruden and the Raiders getting Micah Parsons to improve that Raiders defense.
All right, I would actually love that pick if I was a Raiders fan. You had some sneakily good picks, Isaiah, but you've also had some head scratching ones, so it's a little bit of a mixed bag with your mock draft. But you're predicting some really solid trade ups, really solid picks occasionally. I'm impressed. But with that, the 15th overall selection in my mock draft belongs to the Lions via the trade earlier. And with that, they will select Devontae Smith, wide receiver out of Alabama. And to me, this makes too much sense. They just lost Golladay, and we already spent time talking about how good Devontae Smith could be. So I'll just leave it at that. This just makes too much sense. And as of right now, I'd say the winner of the draft would be the Lions if it played out like this, because you traded down, accrued more picks, and then got a guy you easily could have taken at number 7, and no one would have blamed you. So if this plays out, Detroit Lions are the winners of the draft so far.
Ryan, I am very stunned that you have Devontae Smith falling out of the top 10. Because
you had Sewell, offensive tackle out of Oregon, falling out of the top 10, so I don't want to hear it, mister.
Hey, but this is Devontae Smith we're talking about, the Heisman Trophy winner. Sewell, I mean, left tackles and guards and offensive linemen, they've, like, even though no matter how high they're rated, they constantly fall a lot. But man, this is a wide receiver that we're talking about, Ryan.
Let me say this. I'm scared that some NFL GMs will look at his size and automatically think he can't be a first round wide receiver. That's my fear, and that's why I think that Waddle will be taken before him and Chase will be taken before him. I just think that fear will kind of paralyze some GMs and they won't select him because of it. Not with two other great wide receivers available. So that's why I have him falling this low.
Good point, Ryan. But for me, at number 15, I have the New England Patriots on the board, and I have them drafting an Alabama wide receiver, but not Devontae Smith. It's Jalen Waddle. I know the Patriots, they spent a lot of money in free agency getting Jonnu Smith, Hunter Henry, Kendrick Bourne, among others, but they need a true number one wide receiver, and I think that Jalen Waddle could be that. He's an excellent route runner. He's very fast as well. He's got excellent hands as well. That's why, he was, I think, behind Devontae Smith, he was Alabama's best wide receiver. But, and also Nick Saban, Bill Belichick, they have, that relationship going back to their days with the Cleveland Browns. And Belichick always drafts a lot of Alabama players. So I think that this makes a lot of sense for the New England Patriots.
All right. And with that, the 16th pick of the NFL draft, I have the Arizona Cardinals helping to fix their biggest issue, which was defense. And with that, they will take Farley. I believe it's how you pronounce it. Farley, cornerback out of Virginia Tech. To me, after Patrick, cornerback out of Alabama, it's kind of murky where the cornerbacks rank. So it took a lot of research. I think Farley graded higher than other cornerbacks in his class. He did have that injury, but if his medical records come back clean, I think he would have easily. I think his medical records come back clean. He'll be the selection here. And if that injury just didn't happen at all, I think he would have been the more clear-cut number 2 option. But that injury does kind of weigh over his draft profile. So it's tough. It's tough to gauge the corners after Patrick, but I think the Cardinals will go Caleb because I think he has the highest potential out of the remaining quarterbacks on the boards.
Before I get into my pick, I just want to, go through some of our fan comments. Ishmael Lancaster says that I got the Eagles getting Mac Jones at number 12. I mean, I really don't get that pick because the Eagles have Jalen Hurts right now. Ishmael, if you're not sold on Jalen Hurts, then I could see why the Eagles would make that pick, but I just don't think I don't think you can afford to give up after 1 year of Jalen Hurts. That's why I wouldn't agree with that pick. And also, Casey King says, "Good evening, guys." Casey, thanks so much for tuning into our show tonight. We really appreciate you. And also, Casey says the Raiders need to draft all defense. Totally agree with you on that point. For me, Ryan, with the number 16 pick, I've got the Arizona Cardinals drafting J.C. Horn, the cornerback out of I believe South Carolina. Yeah, South Carolina. And the reason why I have that pick is because, like you said, Arizona, they have a tremendous offense with Cliff Kingsbury, Kyler Murray leading that show. And you got DeAndre Hopkins and AJ Green and Christian Kirk. And the offense is just loaded for Arizona. The big issue with Arizona is their defense. And they're very suspect in the secondary. So they need to improve that secondary. And like you said, Caleb Farley and J.C. Horn, I think, are the two best cornerbacks behind Patrick Surtain. And it's kind of murky. You don't really know who's the better player, but I'm just going to go with J.C. Horn just because I don't really, or I trust Farley, but it's because of his injury concerns that I'm worried about.
I'll say it was between these two players for me with the 16th selection, and I went with Farley because in my research I saw that Horn was a man-to-man player and liked to press at the line of scrimmage, and that had a lot to do with his success because I don't believe he's nearly as athletic as some of these other cornerbacks. The problem is if you get to the NFL level and you're not just otherworldly amazing at pressing at the line of scrimmage, which is hard to do with wide receivers like Devontae Smith, Michael Thomas, wide receivers like that. It could be problematic. So it was extremely close, but due to that factor mainly, I went with Farley, even with the injury risk, because I think he has higher upside and a higher floor without the injury being a part of the decision. So tough decision, but yeah, cornerbacks obviously should be the selection here. But with the 17th pick in the NFL draft, I have the Raiders staying put. And I know we just had the comments that said they need to draft all defense, and it's very true. By Casey King, yes, thank you. Casey makes a very good point that defense does need help, but I don't have them getting help on the defensive side of the ball here. Instead, I have them selecting Tucker, tackle
Wow.
/ guard out of USC. And I have them making this selection for one key reason. People or NFL scouts are concerned if he can be a tackle, and if he can't be a tackle, he'd have to be a guard. Well, guess what? The Raiders just got rid of all their offensive linemen, so put him anywhere. They need help all over the offensive line. So if he turns out to be a guard, this would be a great selection. If he turns out to be a tackle, this would be an even better selection. But either way, a great selection, guard or tackle. So this just made too much sense in my opinion because they just need offensive linemen in a big way.
Ryan, for me, with the number 17 pick, I have the Minnesota Vikings on the clock. I think they got the pick, or in my mock draft, they got the pick via the Raiders in the trade when the Raiders in my mock draft traded up to the number 14th pick to get Micah Parsons, the linebacker out of Penn State. But at number 17, Minnesota, I am picking that they will select Kwity Paye. I think that's how you pronounce his name, Kwity Paye, the defensive end out of Michigan. A lot of people have penned this guy as the best edge rusher in this class. He is very athletic. He's a guy that can, get off the line of scrimmage extremely well. And Minnesota, they lost Yannick Ngakoue to the Raiders. They need help on that defensive line. Their defense last year was very inconsistent and wasn't good. So this is the first step in Minnesota fixing their defense and getting back to, how Mike Zimmer likes to play football, which is run the football on offense, have a very kind of a conservative passing attack on offense, and let the defense carry your team, which is Mike Zimmer's specialty. Give me Kwity Paye out of Michigan to the Minnesota Vikings at number 17.
I think that would be a fantastic selection because the Vikings have lost some edge defenders in the last couple years, and I agree with you. I think he's the best defensive end on the boards. I think, or best just in the draft as a whole, and definitely, well, yeah, he's the best on the board I can't speak. Best defensive end in the draft. So this would be a very good selection. Now that I'm done rambling on, I will get to the 18th overall selection in the NFL draft, which belongs to the Dolphins. And I have them selecting Moore, wide receiver out of Mississippi. And here is why I had the Dolphins making this selection. They got offensive line help with the 6th overall pick in the draft. And I think they're in the phase where they need to give Tua the best shot possible because he had actually a pretty bad rookie year compared to some of the others in his class. So he needs to get back on track. So they did that with their first pick. Getting him offensive line help. and now they'll give him the best wide receiver that would fit their team. And here's why I say this. They got Parker on the outside on one side, and they got Will Fuller, wide receiver in free agency, to line up on the outside on the other side. Now you need a slot wide receiver, and Moore is a little undersized, but he would make a fantastic slot wide receiver. He's probably going to be the best slot wide receiver in this draft. So it makes sense for the Dolphins to take him with the 18th overall spot because they already got two guys that can get it done on the outside. Now you just get a fantastic slot, fantastic slot wide receiver to go with their tight ends. They'll give Tua some really good weapons to work with and give him the best chance to succeed.
Great. I like that pick a lot, Ryan, because you addressed giving Tua some weapons. I did that, I believe, when I had the Dolphins taking Devontae Smith at number 6. So it makes a lot of sense. But for me, with the 18th pick, I've got the Miami Dolphins staying put, and I got the Miami Dolphins drafting Christian Barmore, the defensive end out of Alabama. Miami's defense last season, they were ranked 6th in total defense in the NFL. They had a great defense under Brian Flores. So why not, keep stacking that defense? Christian Barmore, Alabama player. Brian Flores came from Bill Belichick, came from New England. They've got that relationship with Alabama, so he knows Barmore really well. And, you just can't get enough of defensive line and defensive ends in the NFL. So I got the Dolphins going with BPA and going Christian Barmore out of Alabama at 18.
I think he's a defensive tackle, but I agree with you. You can't have enough defensive linemen in general. So even though it's a strength, if they really like him as a prospect, even though I think they have more pressing needs, like offensive linemen in general, and another playmaking wide receiver, I wouldn't mind that selection if I was a Dolphins fan because, like you said, it's always a good thing to draft defensive linemen. But with that, we're on to the 19th pick in the NFL draft, and that belongs to the Washington football team. And I have them selecting the linebacker out of Notre Dame. I believe he's widely viewed as the second best linebacker in this class outside of Parsons. And while I think Washington has more pressing needs on the offensive side of the ball, particularly with the offensive line as a whole, I think that because they have Ron Rivera, a defensive coach, I think they'll go best defensive player, and in my opinion, could be the best overall player that fits one of their not most pressing needs, but secondary needs. At secondary, as in like not nearly as important needs, because they got the defensive line set. So I think adding a linebacker and a talented linebacker at that would be a great boost to that defense and can make them even better. Just add on to their strength.
Yeah, I got Washington going defense as well, but not linebacker. I got Washington going to get Caleb Farley, the quarterback out of Virginia Tech. I think this guy is either the second or third best corner in this draft behind Patrick Surtain. This Washington, they have a great defensive line, so they don't really need to strengthen that. Linebackers, you could make an argument that they could draft a linebacker to fill that need or to strengthen that linebacking corps. But I think secondary for them is a bigger need than linebacker. I think their secondary last season wasn't really that good. So I got them getting Caleb Farley, who I think would be it's either him or, like you said, Ryan, that linebacker out of Notre Dame, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, that would be the best defensive player available at that spot. And I just got to go with Caleb Farley because I think Washington needs to fix their secondary.
All right. And with that, we are on the 20th selection, of which I have as or I have going to the Carolina Panthers due to the trade with the Bears earlier. And with this selection, I have them taking Greg Newsome the second, I believe is how you pronounce his name, cornerback out of Northwestern. And I have them making this selection because you saw last year they value building up their defense. And while there are more pressing needs, for instance, I believe it's listed that their more pressing needs are wide receiver and tight ends, in addition to quarterback. But I think in their mind, they solved that with Sam Darnold. Even though they have more pressing needs than cornerback, I think he will probably be the best overall player in their minds. And as we saw last year, they value building their defense through the draft, and they'll continue to do so here.
Ryan, I've
and
got
also because I don't think there's a good enough player at their positions of need, like tight end or wide receiver, to take at this spot over someone like Greg Newsome.
Ryan, you know how you had the Bears trading up to number 10, I believe? Is that where you had the Bears at, number 10?
Trade up to 8th, actually.
Oh, yeah, trade up to 8 to draft Mac Jones out of Alabama and do something really head-scratching. Well, I've got the Bears doing the same thing, like not trading up to 8 and drafting a quarterback, but I got them doing a head-scratching move as well, and that is with the number 20th pick. The Bears will select Rashad Bateman out of Minnesota. And this guy, a lot of people have him going in the second round. But, I think the Bears, Allen Robinson is disgruntled. He hasn't signed his franchise tag yet. I don't think he's going to be with the Chicago Bears next season. They need to fix that wide receiving corps. And I just think that Bateman, after Jamar Chase, after Devontae Smith, after Jalen Waddle, I think he's the fourth best wide receiver on the board. And I saw him play in Minnesota. He was an electrifying player at Minnesota. Give me Bateman to Minnesota to the Bears. My apologies. Give me Bateman to the Bears to help out with either Andy Dalton or whomever the Bears draft with either the second round pick as their quarterback.
I could see this pick making sense because it's not certainty that Robinson will be there after this year, and their wide receiver core outside of Robinson is not that great. So it will be a pretty good selection by the Bears if they still have the 20th overall selection, which they currently do. Oh, go ahead.
I think Bateman at number 20, though, is a bit early. I think Bateman, he is, in my mind, a early second round pick to maybe a late second round pick, like number 29 or number 27 all the way down to 32. I wouldn't pick him at 20, though. I think the Bears, if they really like Bateman, I think they should trade down, accumulate more picks, and then get Bateman either at number 27 or somewhere down in that range.
I'll say that would make sense, but if you feel strongly about a player, should just get him and not take the chance. But with that, we move on to the 21st pick, and I have the Indianapolis Colts selecting, I think Jenkins, how you pronounce it? Jenkins, the tackle out of Oklahoma State. And this is definitely a need pick because they had their left tackle retire this offseason, and they just desperately need tackles to protect Carson Wentz, because if you let him get pressured on a consistent basis, we've seen he can get rattled pretty easily and throw into double coverage. So you need to protect Carson Wentz. You need to protect that investment. That's first and foremost. So while Jenkins may not be the best overall player available in the draft, because in my mock draft, Horn, cornerback out of South Carolina, is still available. I think they go need here as opposed to best overall available.
Yeah, I understand that pick because it's a big need for them. Like you said, Ryan, their tackle retired in the offseason. But for me, I got them going Jalen Phillips, the defensive end out of Miami. I know they have DeForest Buckner and they have not Robert Mathis, but damn, I forgot the guy's name. Oh, Darius Leonard on their defense. But like me and Ryan said earlier, you cannot get enough defensive linemen for any organization. I just think that Jalen Phillips, he is, in my opinion, one of the best defensive linemen in this draft. I think that the coach would be hard pressed to pass him up at number 21, even though they have a big need at tackle. So I'm going to go with Jalen Phillips to be put opposite of DeForest Buckner on their defensive line.
Makes a lot of sense. Like I said earlier, you really can't blame teams that want to stockpile on good defensive linemen. I mean, that's the key to the 49ers' success a couple years ago. So with that, we're on to pick number 22, and I have the Tennessee Titans selecting Horn, cornerback out of South Carolina. Now, for a lot of people, this is probably too low, and I had another cornerback, Newsom, or Greg Newsom, the second, going above him, which will probably shock a lot of people. But I did that for a few reasons. One, pre-draft rankings never play out, so there's always a surprise trying to predict that. And two, I personally liked Newsom over Horn because he was graded higher in Pro Football Focus. And like I said earlier, there's that risk that he can't be a fantastic press defender at the line of scrimmage. And if he can't do that, I think he'll be exposed to the NFL level. So I think there's some risk to Horn. But despite all that, I think at this point he's clearly better than anyone, or clearly better than all the other cornerbacks. Newsom was the last guy that was kind of close, but after that, it's Horn is the best chance you have at getting a starting caliber cornerback. And it fits perfectly for the Titans because they just lost Adoree Jackson and a few other members of their secondary. So they need to rebuild that. And I believe this will be their first step into trying to rebuild their secondary.
Ryan, I've got them going secondary as well, but I've got them going Trevon Moreg. Is that how you pronounce his name? Trevon Moreg, the safety out of TCU. Last season, the Titans' defense wasn't good. It wasn't good at all. They were 24th in total defense in the NFL. That was a complete flip from the previous year, in which they were one of the best defenses in the entire NFL. They just lost Adoree Jackson. I believe they lost Malcolm Butler as well, or they released Malcolm Butler. So they need to fix that secondary. And they also, one of their biggest needs in this draft is a safety. So I got them addressing that need in the draft with Trevon Moreg, who is an excellent safety at TCU.
I'll say makes sense that would be a great selection if available. I only didn't have him being selected by the Titans because I already had him being selected by the Vikings with the 14th overall pick. So again, I would have had him there, but just wasn't available in my mock draft. And with that, we're on to pick number 23. And with the 23rd pick, the New York Jets will select the defensive ends out of Michigan. Like I said earlier, I think he's the best defensive end in this draft class. He's from the Big Ten and kind of reminds me like a discounted version of the Bosa brothers in a way. And I say discounted version for a good reason. He's not going to be nearly as good as them, but he's a very solid player, had a fantastic pass rushing grade this year, according to Pro Football Focus. I think he's also the most complete defensive end. Some of the others are more heavily pass or not nearly as good in the run defense as, how do you pronounce his name?
Quitty Pay, I think that's how you pronounce his name. I might be wrong on that completely, but
I'll say we'll go with that. Paya is probably the best run defender out of the top defensive ends. So I think he, like I said earlier, is the more complete player. And it would make sense that the Jets, who are coached by the former 49ers defensive coordinator, will get someone that can kind of mimic a Bosa brother, considering they have Nick Bosa. So I think this makes sense on a lot of levels.
Yeah, I could see the Jets doing that. You talked about Robert Saleh, the former defensive coordinator for the 49ers, now the head coach of the New York Jets. He's a guy that is very big on stockpiling defensive linemen. And if you can get a guy like Kwity Paye, who, like you said, Ryan, who kind of reminds you of the Bosa brothers, who is really fast, can come off the edge really quick, then that really unlocks the entire defensive line. And you saw what Nick Bosa, his addition, did for the 49ers, his speed off the edge, what that did for guys like Eric Armstead, what that did for DeForest Buckner and everybody else on that defensive line. So I think he would be an excellent addition for the Jets at number 23. But the reason why I don't have him there is because I think I had him off the board to, I believe it was, I think to Washington. No, not to Washington. It was to
Vikings at 17.
Yes, Vikings at 17. But Ryan, I'm going to go for my pick for the Jets. I'm going to go with an offensive lineman, Samuel Cosmi out of Texas, to help them protect either Zach Wilson or Justin Fields, whomever their quarterback is. You're going to have to protect him. You can't do what you did with Sam Darnold, and that is not protect him, not put a team around him. You got to put a team around your franchise quarterback, and I think the Jets do that with Samuel Cosmi to the New York Jets at number 23. Samuel Cosmi, he's a guy that's very experienced. He played 35 games in college football. I think he never missed a game in college football. He's a guy that's 6'5", 314 pounds. He's also a guy that, he's very versatile. You can put him at tackle. You can put him at guard. You can even put him at center. He's also great at pass protection. Struggles a bit at run protection, but I think that if you give him time to develop, I think he can work on that. So I think he would be a very good fit for the New York Jets and helping to protect Justin Fields, who I have as the Jets' next quarterback.
A very smart pick. You always want to protect your investment at quarterback. So I really like that pick, but I went defensive end because in my mock draft, they have their pick at all the defensive ends. So they can pick whichever defensive end in this draft they want. And I think that'll just be too enticing for the former defensive coordinator to pass up on. So that's the reason I had defensive ends. And with that, we go to the 24th pick in the draft. And that belongs to the Pittsburgh Steelers. Gross. And with this selection, they will take the tackle out of North Dakota State. And here's why. I think that they probably would go with a guy like Jenkins if available, but because he won't be available, I think they'll kind of scramble in a way and just take whoever or take the next best option. And to me, that would be the tackle at North Dakota State. I still have Samuel on my board, but I believe Dylan has, according to some scouts, more of an upside, a higher ceiling. Definitely a lower floor than Samuel, but a higher ceiling. So I think, and because scouts are all about potential, I think Dylan will be drafted before Samuel, and he will go to the Pittsburgh Steelers because the Steelers desperately need help on the offensive line. They've lost their left tackle to free agency, and even if they did re-sign him, which they still could do, I think it's high time they draft his replacement.
Ryan, I'm going with a offensive tackle as well, or an offensive lineman, but I'm going to go with Alex Leatherwood out of Alabama. Like you said, the Steelers, they need to improve their offensive line. I was really debating whether or not to go quarterback here, go go with Kyle Trask or, go with maybe Kellen Mond in the late first round, because you've watched the NFL draft a lot in your life, that there's a lot of guys that are projected to be second or third round picks. They end up getting picked in the first round, especially some quarterbacks. So I was really thinking hard about maybe putting Kyle Trask in this spot because, the Steelers, they need to draft Big Ben's successor, as this is Big Ben's final season with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And Kyle Trask just looks like a prototypical Steelers quarterback, big arm, guy that can be mobile. But I decided, you know what? Alex Leatherwood makes a lot of sense. They need to improve that offensive line because the Steelers, I think, are banking on winning or trying to win this season with Big Ben as their quarterback. You have to give him protection if you want to win this season. So I think Leatherwood makes a lot of sense for Pittsburgh.
I think both of our heads are in the same spot for the Steelers, and that they just need offensive line help. Disagree on who, but the need and the idea is the same between the two of us. And with that, we go to the 25th pick, which belongs to the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I have them selecting, one moment, Rashad Bateman, wide receiver out of Minnesota. And I have this pick for a couple reasons. Even though they got Marvin Jones, this pick falls into the give your new quarterback the most help you can possibly give him. And I also think they'll take Bateman because wide receiver from Minnesota, Big Ten team, Urban Meyer, Big Ten guy. So because Bateman is probably the best overall player still on the boards, I think they'll take him because the Big Ten connection. And like I said, best player on the board, Big Ten connection, and just trying to help Trevor Lawrence however you can.
Ryan, I got the Jaguars going with someone to build around Trevor Lawrence, and that is Tevin Jenkins, the offensive lineman out of Oklahoma State, I believe. The Jaguars, their offensive line last year was atrocious. They need to protect their quarterback, their prized investment in Trevor Lawrence. They can't be like the Cincinnati Bengals, let Trevor Lawrence get hit a gazillion times and then, he gets his season cut short because of injury. You have to learn from what the Bengals did not do last year. You have to protect your quarterback. So I think they go with Tevin Jenkins just to protect Trevor Lawrence.
That is very true, and that's probably the smarter pick, and that's why I didn't go with that, because Jacksonville is not a smart organization. So I'm projecting that in their minds, they'll see drafting the best overall player available, even though it's a wide receiver, will make more sense than drafting a tackle, which would be the smarter move, even though he's not a better player than Bateman, if that makes sense, because you'd rather have a worse player on the offensive line than take a better player at wide receiver, but to the detriment of the offensive line. So I really like your selection. I think it would be a fantastic pick for Jacksonville. But with that, we get to another special selection, my Cleveland Browns at 26. Now, initially, I was considering having them trade back in the draft to accrue more picks for depth purposes. But in my mock drafts, there was a player that was just too good to pass up. And even if he's not there, I still think they go for a defensive end that's still available. But with the 26th pick, my Cleveland Browns select Christian Barmore, I believe that's how you pronounce his name, or Barmore. Christian Barmore, defensive tackle out of Alabama. They just released Sheldon Richardson, making defensive tackle their top needs overall. He's the best defensive tackle in the draft, and if he's still available at 26, it would just make too much sense.
Excellent choice, Ryan. But with this pick, number 26, your Browns aren't going to make this pick. I got them trading with the New England Patriots for Stephon Gilmore, their Pro Bowl cornerback. The Browns, they got to fix that defense. They made a lot of moves in the offseason to fix that defense. They signed Josh Johnson. They signed Jadeveon Clowney. Imagine Stephon Gilmore opposite of Josh Johnson. I mean, it would just not be fair for other teams in the NFL. And the reason why I think the Patriots want to get rid of Stephon Gilmore, even though he's a very, very good corner, is because Bill Belichick doesn't like to pay his players massive amounts of money. And that's what Stephon Gilmore is making right now. He's making a lot of money. And I think the Patriots want to get rid of him to save some salary cap space. And there's been rumors everywhere that Stephon Gilmore is available via trade, and there's teams that are reportedly offering the Patriots a package for Stephon Gilmore. So I got the Browns trading for Stephon Gilmore. I think that would be a hell of a move for them. I think, Ryan, if that trade does go down on draft night, I don't think we would see you for the rest of the draft show because you would be out celebrating your Browns getting Stephon Gilmore. But for me, I got the Patriots after trading with the Browns and trading Stephon Gilmore to the Browns. I got the New England Patriots drafting Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah from Notre Dame at number 26. The Patriots, they need to fix that. They improved, or they invested a lot in free agency on that defense. Why not add the best defensive player left on the board in Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah to go along with Dante Hightower?
That would be a terrible, terrible trade for the Browns to make for this simple reason. They already don't have cap space. How are you going to afford Gilmore when Denzel Ward's contract is due, when Baker Mayfield's contract is due, when Nick Chubb's contract is due? Plus, they already have, like I said, they have Denzel Ward's, who they will resign. They signed Troy Hill in free agency, a fantastic slot corner that can be moved to the outside, so he's versatile. They have Greedy Williams, who they took with the second round, or they took in the second round a few years ago. So I don't see them being so desperate to trade for Gilmore when they have so many big time players contracts coming up due soon. So I don't see this. I don't think it would be a smart move in the long run.
But Ryan, even if New England just wants a first round pick, you won't want to do it?
No, because that would require us also losing Ward's or Nick Chubb, and I don't feel comfortable losing those two and giving up picks to do so because, like I said, Denzel Ward is a fantastic player, and we already have him. We don't need to give up selections to get a cornerback like Denzel Ward's, who's very similar to Gilmore. I think Gilmore maybe is probably better, but the picks to give up in addition to the salary, I don't know. I'd rather just roll with what we have at cornerback.
Oh, I was muted for a sec there, but I get what you're saying, but I just think if you're gonna only give up one first round pick, which is not even high up in the draft, the Browns are picking at number 20? No, not 20. Are they picking at 26?
They are picking at 26, but here's the thing, Isaiah. At some point, you're going to have the contracts of all these stars due, and when you pay them, the only way you can have a complete team around them is by drafting well and getting relatively cheap talent to give you elite production for 4 years. The Browns are, if not already at that stage, approaching that stage where they can only get impact players through the drafts. So I just don't think it makes sense for the Browns at this time. Maybe a couple years ago when they had more, cap space, but I don't know.
Well,
they would have to trade away. They would have to trade away like Odell or Landry to free up cap space. But even then, I just don't like it. And nothing against Gilmore. He's a fantastic player, but I think the Browns are good enough in the secondary to add maybe a corner in the second or third rounds and be good. I just think that's a move that's there's too much potential for failure in that move. Not because Gilmore would fail, but because of the roster ramifications.
One last point before we move on to our next pick, and that is, if I'm the Browns, I would do it because Gilmore's contract, I believe it's his last season. I might be wrong on that, but I think it's his last season of his contract. So you could just be like, what's that team, that the Eagles from back in the day, that just put all their chips in the middle of the table to win this season, and if it doesn't work, then it doesn't work. But if it works, then great. And also, I would trade Odell because I think that he's a detriment to the Browns, and he's coming off a torn ACL, and you don't know how he will be after that ACL injury. Because I know a lot of guys come back and they're like the same, but there is a group of people that don't come back like they once were after that ACL injury.
Yes, that's a good point. And I think you're right. Gilmore's contract would end after this season, but he would also be an unrestricted free agent, and the Browns would still have to pay him a good amount of money. So you're trading away a first-round pick, and now there's also the potential that he leaves after 1 year. So, like I said, too much risk for failure, in my opinion. And with that, we will move on in the NFL draft to pick number 27. And I have the Baltimore Ravens selecting Phillips, defensive end out of Miami. And it's because they lost some key pieces to their defensive line. And I think Phillips is the best defensive end currently available. So, great player, pressing needs, match made in heaven.
Ryan, for me, I'm going to go with the Ravens taking offense and taking a wide receiver to bolster their wide receiving corps. I'm going to have them taking Elijah Moore out of Ole Miss, who I think you had him going, I think 15 or something like that. But you had him going like a lot earlier than I have him going. But I think Elijah Moore is an electric playmaker. I watched him play with Ole Miss. He was a great football player there. Lane Kiffin used him in a lot of ways there at Ole Miss, and I think the Ravens could do the same thing. And I think the Ravens, they also desperately need to bolster their wide receiving corps, because when you look at their wide receiving corps, you do have Marquise Hollywood Brown, but other than that, I think that's kind of it for the Ravens. And the Ravens know that you just can't just rely on a rushing attack to win in the NFL, especially if you want to win a Super Bowl. You got to have a competent passing attack to go along with that extraordinary, extraordinary rushing attack that you have in Baltimore. I think Elijah Moore would be a great addition to the Ravens.
I agree with the need, but I don't think Baltimore utilizes their wide receivers enough to invest 2 first-round picks in such a short time at the position. So that's why I have them addressing the defense, which is another pressing need, and something I think they'll invest more. They'd be more willing to invest first-round picks in. But I have to go real quick, Isaiah. I'll be right back. So I will unveil your next selection and let you break that down.
All right, for my next pick, I think it's pick number 28. I've got the New Orleans Saints making a very stunning move and drafting their quarterback of the future and their next franchise quarterback, Kyle Trask, at number 28. Listen, we've heard so many reports, especially in the past week, that the Saints and their head coach, Sean Payton, absolutely love Kyle Trask. He's got a big arm. He's got really good mobility. He's a guy that can make plays with his feet and with his arm. He's the typical quarterback that you need nowadays to win in the NFL. And Ryan, I don't know if you're listening to what I'm about to say, but I've said this on previous shows that we've had on the network when we talked about Kyle Trask and talked about his potential fit with the New Orleans Saints. I think Kyle Trask would be a Hall of Famer if he landed in New Orleans. That's right, I said it. I think Kyle Trask would be a Hall of Famer if he lands in New Orleans. And New Orleans is a perfect situation for Kyle Trask because, first of all, Kyle Trask won't be thrust into action early in his NFL career. You can afford to sit him for 1 year behind Jameis Winston and learn and develop under Sean Payton. Sean Payton is a quarterback guru. This guy is one of the best offensive play callers, offensive schemers that we have in the NFL. He knows how to call plays and how to play his offense to his quarterback strengths. And I think that Kyle Trask, with his big arm and with his mobility, he would unlock Sean Payton's offense, and he would take Sean Payton's offense up 3 notches and make it super dynamic. I think that you add Kyle Trask, once he's ready, you add Kyle Trask to Alvin Kamara, Michael Thomas, and that great defense. That's a perfect situation for Kyle Trask, and it might be the Mahomes Kansas City type situation that we see now in Kansas City that we will have in New Orleans if Kyle Trask in fact goes to the New Orleans Saints.
I like the idea, but I don't think the Saints will pick a quarterback this year. And if they do, they may wait to see if he falls into the second round and then maybe trade up in the second round to get him. I just don't think they use their first round pick on a quarterback. So with my selection, I have the New Orleans Saints taking Samuel Jr., cornerback out of Florida State, for 2 reasons. One, it's a need because outside of Marshawn Lattimore, their cornerbacks are just kind of meh. And then outside of that, there's constant rumors that they may trade Lattimore because his contract, or because their salary cap / contract situation for the team as a whole was pretty bad. They alleviated that, but they may look for a big return for Lattimore to, one, ease the salary cap troubles that they're currently in, and that'd probably be the main reason because Lattimore is a good player. So they would take this selection because he would play great outside of Lattimore. And if they end up deciding to move Lattimore as part of their salary cap situation, I think they view him as being able to step up to the number 1 cornerback spot. So I think it makes sense on a few levels.
And I could see that. I could see that playing out for the Saints because, if they're not going to take a cornerback, they don't need receiver help. They don't need running back help. They don't need a tight end. Secondary could be one of the needs that they do address in the NFL draft. So I could see it, but for me, I'm just going to go with Trask since I think that, Drew Brees, he's gone now. Jameis Winston, I don't think he's the answer. Taysom Hill, the guy can't throw, and we've seen with the Ravens, you can't rely on a quarterback that can only run the football to win in the NFL. Trask cannot only throw the football well, but he can run the football extremely well as well. So I think that he would be a great fit for the New Orleans Saints.
I think they'll give their current QBs more of a shot than you realize. But moving on, we got the 29th pick in the draft, which belongs to the Packers. And I have the Packers taking Collins, linebacker out of Tulsa. And I do that because the Packers need help on the defensive side of the ball in terms of their run defense, because that has been the main thing that's exposed them in their 2 most recent playoffs. So they just need to get tougher on the defensive end and along the defensive line. They got really good pieces, but they definitely need to add, 1, just need to add more depth, and 2, just level of toughness, and Collins, who's an insane athlete, like 260 pounds, extremely fast for that size. I think that would be the perfect complement to their pretty good defense already to make it elite and maybe help them take the next step in the playoffs.
All right, for me, Ryan, I've got the Packers addressing the defense because, like we saw last year, especially in the NFC Championship game, their defense got exposed last season. But I got them going with cornerback and going with Greg Newsome the second. I believe he's out of Northwestern. I might be wrong on that.
Oh, you have Greg Newsom. You have Samuel listed here.
Oh, no. Oh, I had to change mines earlier because I forgot to put Greg Newsome in the first round, and that would be a total disrespect to Greg Newsome if I didn't put him in the first round and put Asante Samuel over him. But I got Greg Newsome going to Green Bay at number 29. Kevin King was a total disaster last season. You guys saw that play to Scotty Miller late against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They need to improve their secondary if they are going to, win a Super Bowl this upcoming season. So I got them going with Newsome out of Northwestern.
Makes sense. I just think they need to address that run defense a little more, even though I agree with your logic, but I just think address the run defense would be more beneficial to them. And with that, we're on to the 30th selection in the NFL draft, which belongs to the Bills. And I have them taking defensive end out of Penn State. And I have this as the selection because on the offensive side of the ball, I think they're pretty good. They did lose Lawson, I believe. So they're probably looking to reinforce the defensive line. I have Jason as the best defensive end available. If I'm not mistaken, he didn't have any sacks this year, but he's a really gifted athlete and can be developed at the next level. So I can see the Bills taking a shot to try to get an elite defensive end, which would really bolster that roster because they're very good in the secondary. So if they can get an elite defensive end, I think that would take their defense to the next level.
Yeah, I agree. I think if the Bills can get an elite defensive line, their defense could definitely be taken to the next level, especially with that great secondary and that great linebacking corps that you mentioned, Ryan. But I got the Bills addressing the offense and drafting Najee Harris out of Alabama. You look at the running backs. It's not Landon Singleton. Oh, Devin Singleton. Devin Singleton and Zach Moss. They weren't really those game-changing players that the Bills had hoped for. I think if you add Najee Harris, you could take some pressure off of Josh Allen, and it will make their offense even more dynamic, adding Najee Harris and that great ground game that he brings to the passing attack with Stephon Diggs and those guys that they have on in the passing game. So I think it's going to be a great fit if they do, in fact, manage to land Najee Harris out of Bama.
I personally think that would be a mistake because Singletary and Moss, while they weren't truly elite, they were very good running backs. And to take a running back in the first round, you have to have absolutely no options at the running back position. Think the Giants before Barkley. They just did not have any game changers at all. So, I think if they take Harrison or Harris, they will regret it. Kind of like how I'm thinking the Kansas City Chiefs regret taking Edwards-Helaire. Not because Edwards-Helaire is a bad player, but because they didn't utilize him in the passing game as much as they probably thought they could. And they definitely had other needs to address, which, speaking of the Kansas City Chiefs, brings us to our next selection. See, I'm getting this hosting thing down. I'm making segues. So with the next selection, we go to the Kansas City Chiefs, and I have them taking the only position they should take at this spot, and that is a tackle, Samuel out of Texas. I have him going here for all the reasons you listed earlier, and because they just cut both their starting tackles. They need a tackle. If they take someone besides a tackle at this position, Kansas City fans, they should be very upset. This would be one of the few dumb decisions their team has made over the last few years. They need to take a tackle. You can't cut both your tackles and then just tell your fans, "Oh, we signed a center and a guard. We'll be fine." Like no, you lost the Super Bowl because your replacement tackles were just awful. Let's just call it what it is. They were awful. So you need to fix that. So take a tackle. I'm not even a Chiefs fan, and I'm begging them to take a tackle because it would be so stupid if they took any other position. I don't care who's available. You take the best tackle still available because that's how much of a need it is for the Kansas City Chiefs.
And going into the comment section before I give my pick for who I think Kansas City will select, Shardo Gupta says if he's the Washington football team, he is taking Elijah Vera Tucker out of USC at number 19 in the draft. But Ryan, for me, with the 31st pick, I've got the Kansas City Chiefs not listening to you and not taking a tackle. I've got them taking Zaven Collins. I think that's how you pronounce his name. Zaven Collins, the defensive end out of Tulsa. And here's why. It's because if you watch the Super Bowl, yes, I know Patrick Mahomes got pressured a ton. He got sacked a lot. But their defense got exposed big time in that Super Bowl. I said going into the season, Kansas City's defense is not that good. Everybody's saying, of how Kansas City is such a great team and this and that. Their defense is not that good, and that is going to be their Achilles heel and what is going to take them down. Whether it's in the playoffs or in the Super Bowl, it's that defense. They have to improve that defense, and I would start with improving the defensive line and improving the pass rush. Yes, Chris Jones. Yes, you have Chris Jones and Frank Clark, but those guys, besides them, that defensive line wasn't really that good. Zaven Collins, I think, would be a great pick for Kansas City at number 31.
Can't disagree more. Not because I don't like the player. I had Collins going earlier, so that shows you I think he's very talented. But like I said earlier, they need to take a tackle. If they don't take a tackle, it'd be a very big mistake because they have no one right now. And you can't just rely on Patrick Mahomes to run around for 1,000 yards behind the line of scrimmage every game, throwing up Hail Mary passes while falling on his back, because that's what he did in the Super Bowl, because his tackles, who were replacement tackles, so, they weren't supposed to be elite, but they were just bad. They were bad for backups, so they need depth and they need starting caliber tackles. So anything but a tackle, heck, anything besides a tackle in the first 2 rounds would be a mistake. And heck, if you take a tackle in the first round and the second round, don't be afraid to take one like the 5th or 6th round for depth purposes, Kansas City. You need it. And with that, we go to the Super Bowl champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And I think this will be my most surprising selection of the entire show, in all honesty. That most surprising selection that did involve a trade. So, with the 32nd pick, I have the Super Bowl champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers selecting Moore, wide receiver out of Purdue. Now, let me explain why. Tom Brady loves his running backs out of the backfield. And while Moore was a wide receiver at Purdue, he's 5'7", and with his athletic ability, I saw the man just destroy Ohio State. I saw him run in my nightmares for years after Purdue faced Ohio State. The man is good, and the man is fast. He's strong, can do everything. I think in the NFL, he'll be a fantastic slot wide receiver and a fantastic running back hybrid. He'll be an improved, dare I say, improved version of James White. And while I think there's other picks that Tampa Bay could make, they could reinforce their offensive line in some way. They could reinforce their secondary at safety, even though they already have a couple really good safeties. They could always add depth and get better, maybe even improve cornerback. But I think they'll give Tom Brady another weapon. And I think Moore is going to be a fantastic NFL player if he can stay healthy and can be Tampa Bay's version of James White for Tom Brady.
Ryan, for my final pick of this mock draft, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the rich gets richer. I got them getting the best defensive player left on the board, and that is Aziz Ojulari from my Georgia Bulldogs, the defensive end. The reason why I think this would be a good pick for the Bucks is because this guy last season had 8.5 sacks. He was a monster on the or in the defensive line for Georgia. He was a game wrecker. And I kind of liken this pick to when Kansas City drafted D Ford, when they really didn't need to draft D Ford a couple of years back when they had Justin Houston, Tom Bahali, and all those great defensive players along their defensive line. They just did it because he was their best or the best player on the board, and they did it because they knew that Justin Houston and Tom Bahali were getting up there in age, so they did it as a to get the guy as kind of a like a replacement or a successor to their to Tom Bahali and also to Justin Houston in case either they retired or they got up in age, because Ryan, that defensive linemen, they don't really play until their 40s. I think 37 might be cutting it for defensive linemen. And if you look at Jason Pierre-Paul, the guy right now is, I believe, 32 years of age. I think that he might have 2-3 seasons left of best football in him before, if you're Tampa Bay, you should cut ties with him. And I think drafting Aziz Ojulari, who can give you a great defensive line right now and give you a lot of good depth on your defensive line, he would be a perfect successor to Jason Pierre-Paul, and he would be younger as well, and he would be cheaper. And imagine him and Shaq Barrett on your defensive line. That would be scary.
Your analysis brought me to who I would have taken if I didn't think Moore was the best choice. So if Moore couldn't be drafted, I just thought this now. Tampa Bay would definitely take Davis, linebacker out of Kentucky, for the exact reasons you gave. Yes, they're set at linebacker, but their linebacker, who's their star linebacker outside of White?
I think
that's on the tip of my tongue.
I have it too, but I'm forgetting his name.
They have 2-star linebacker. The point of the story is they have 2-star linebackers, but one's more advanced in age or approaching advanced age. So for the same reason you gave for your selection, they draft a linebacker out of Kansas who ran a 4.4 at his pro day. So
Levante
David, yes. So you draft Davis to eventually replace Davids because they're both extremely fast linebackers. So it fits what they run defensively. Now that I'm thinking about it, that may be the selection here. I'm going to stick with.
Feel free to change your pick, Ryan. Feel free if you want. I already changed mine once.
No, I think they're going to give Tom Brady the weapons, but I would not be shocked at all if that was the selection. So I'm going Moore because I think they just want to give Tom Brady all the weapons possible. Plus, I don't think they're going to re-sign Antonio Brown, so it kind of fills that vacuum in a way. And with that, Isaiah, that is our mock draft for the 2021 season, or the 2021 mock draft. Before we go, I want us to answer 2 questions about our own individual mock drafts. Who do you think in your mock draft would be considered the quote-unquote winner? And that's not who got the best player, but who got like the best player for the best value, if that makes sense.
Wow, that's a very tough question, man. You're putting me on the spot, Ryan. But I'll actually go with you first on this because I need to take some time to think about this real quick.
All right, that makes sense. I'll answer the two questions that I'm going to pose. So the first question, like I said, was who was the winner in your individual mock draft? For me, I'd have to go with the Detroit Lions because they traded from 7 to 15 and they got a guy who they easily could draft at 17. I think it's a home run of a draft if that was the case for the Detroit Lions. There's plenty of good selections, but to get a guy that fills your biggest needs and trading down and getting better picks in the process while getting someone you could easily have taken at 7 and not a ton of people would blame you. I think that's a fantastic draft right there. It's the best case scenario, in my opinion. And then my second question, I'll give Isaiah more time for this one as well. Who's your biggest loser? For me, this is very simple. In my mock draft, in this alternate reality, it's the Chicago Bears trading up to take Mac Jones, saying his name right, Mac Jones, QB out of Alabama. To not only take Mac Jones, but to trade up from 20th to 8 would require a lot of picks. And then for all those picks to turn into Mac Jones, it would be Jared Goff 2.0, except I think Jared Goff would be a better quarterback in the NFL than Mac Jones. So, yeah, for me, it'd be the Bears in this scenario.
All right, for me, the first question. I'm looking at my mock draft right now, and I could think of a couple of winners. Number one is my 49ers, obviously, because I've liked Zach Wilson ever since, watching him play a couple of years ago. I thought he was super dynamic, and then everybody got on the Zach Wilson bandwagon and started propping him up. This kid is special. This kid has a cannon of an arm. This kid can make plays with his legs. He can throw on the run. And imagine him and Kyle Shanahan with that great running game the Niners have with
Wishful
Mostert.
thinking. Wishful thinking. You know he's going to the Jets.
But on, let me finish. But with Mostert and Jeff Wilson and the wide receivers that can, run super fast down the field. Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, and George Kittle. Let's not forget him. Who on God's green earth can stop this 49ers offense? I really don't think anybody can stop the 49ers.
I'll give you one team.
49ers.
I'll give you one team that can shut down this offense you just laid out.
Go ahead.
Do you know who this team is? I'll give you a guess.
I don't have any clue. Nothing on my head right now, Ryan.
It's the Jets. Because they're going to take Zach Wilson, they're going to stop this offense from existing. So that's who's going to stop this offense because the Jets are taking Wilson. You just need to accept it and move on. I know you want Wilson to go to the 49ers, but this is wishful thinking. This is not you using good sports reasoning. You know that they're going to take Wilson, the Jets, that is. You tried everything. You tried every single connection for the Jets to take Fields, but deep down that's not going to happen.
We'll see next week, Thursday, Ryan, because I have a feeling that I might be right, and I might be running down the street celebrating that the Niners got this new dynamic quarterback and this new dynamic offense that I don't think anybody in the NFL could stop. But besides the 49ers, I'm going to go with Minnesota, the Vikings. And I know my guy John Alcorn always likes to rip the Vikings, but I'm going to go with the Vikings in my mock draft. They traded down with the Raiders, got a couple of assets in return, and also got Kwity Paye, who is a monster on that defensive line. He, like you said, Ryan, he's a guy that might be the second coming of Nick Bosa with a tremendous.
Whoa! I said discount Nick Bosa.
Discount Nick
Bosa. Let's get that very clear.
Yes, discount Nick Bosa, but he's very fast off the edge. I think he would help Minnesota's defensive line big time, and they got a couple of extra assets in return. So it's a great trade for Minnesota if they actually make this move. And my biggest loser, man, I don't really think that I have any, big losers from this draft because I based my mock draft on needs. Ryan, I mean, maybe you can point it out, but I would say I would say right now in my mock draft, I probably go with I probably go with whew, I probably go with
Cowboys.
uh
In your mock draft, it to me the biggest loser would be the Cowboys because I think they would reach for any of the defensive ends, and they drafted a defensive end who I don't think will adjust well to the NFL level. So to me, it would be the Cowboys taking a defensive end, especially when how you pronounce his name, Sewell, tackle out of
duo.
Oregon is available. Also, that's a loser in your draft. The teams that didn't, the teams that could use an offensive tackle that didn't draft Sewell, and also Jamar Chase going or dropping down to eighth. I don't see it. So there's a few losers, but to me, it probably have to be the Cowboys because I think that's just a massive reach. It would be like the Raiders taking what's his name?
Cleveland
Defense.
Farrell.
Yes, taking Farrell a few years ago. That would remind me too much of that. So
I was going to say, looking at this list right now, I was going to say, like, my biggest loser probably is the Bears because, like, you draft Bateman, who I think is the fourth or fifth best receiver in this draft. You draft him at number 20 when you could trade down, accumulate more assets, and then pick him at either 27 to 32 or even early in the second round.
yeah, there's a few losers, but at least in my mock draft, the loser is very easy. It's the Chicago Bears. And I'm sorry to one of our co hosts, he who should not be named because he's probably very upset with me. Callan, I'm sorry.
Hey Ryan, don't worry, man. I'm going to refrain from laughing at the Bears and the Broncos because every time Ryan, ever since you've been gone, every time I laugh at John Elcorn's Broncos or Callan's Bears, my 49ers end up doing something even worse than they do and pulling the hold my beer meme on me. So I'm going to refrain from laughing at the Bears and the Broncos because I have a feeling if I start laughing at them, my Niners are going to turn back and draft Mac Jones at number 3 and make me absolutely flip out.
Well, we will see next Thursday. And with that, let's go to final thoughts. All right, I'll go first. My final thoughts are this. I made last week's about the Browns, so this week I'm going to make it about the other NFL team in Ohio, and that's the Bengals. Bengals, I don't like you. I don't like your organization. I think your fans are annoying. Cincinnati basically isn't in Ohio. Their airport's in Kentucky, so I wouldn't have a problem if Kentucky just took over Cincinnati one day. I'd be like, Ohio's probably better for it. But there's one thing you do have that I really like. You have Joe Burrow. I really like him. He's an Ohio kid, went to Ohio State for a while, transferred for good reason, and I really like Joe Burrow. You're going to ruin him if you don't draft an offensive tackle with your first pick in this draft. Please don't be stupid. Do not let Joe Burrow become the next Andrew Luck. We cannot have another Andrew Luck. It was too devastating. I will not have that same process unfold to a quarterback I really like. So, Bengals, do not mess this up. I have you picking Jamar Chase because I think you're incompetent. Prove to me that you are not incompetent and take Sewell. And heck, if you don't even like Sewell, take any tackle. I will sing your praises if you take any tackle. Even if it's not Sewell. Just please don't ruin Burrow. Don't say, oh, our offensive line's improving, and then just not address it. Do not be stupid. And I'm saying this as a Browns fan because I want the Browns to beat Joe Burrow. But the thing is, in order for the Browns to beat Joe Burrow, he actually has to be playing in the NFL. So let the man have an NFL career. That's all I ask.
Ryan, my final thoughts is that, first of all, before I get into my final thoughts, just want to take the moment to thank all of our fans for tuning in to this show tonight. We really appreciate you. I want to thank
even Cincinnati fans and
yes,
Steelers fans. Man.
yes, especially Cincinnati and Steelers fans. I want to thank Chardot. I want to thank Casey. I want to thank Ishmael. I want to thank Christy, as well as Austin Morrison, who I think is a Bengals fan as well, by the way, Ryan. I also want to thank Chardot, or I'm already mentioned Chardot, never mind. Loro, and also Callan McClurg for tuning in to our show tonight. We really appreciate you guys.
I know you're upset with us, Callan, because both our mock drafts had your Bears not doing the best. But that's not because we hate the Bears. It's because we just think they're desperate and that they'll make a regrettable move. Nothing against you, but we just don't trust your organization. It's the moral of this story.
Ryan, I think Callan's gotten to the point where he just doesn't trust the Bears as well. Because I know that he's been ripping Matt Nagy, he's been ripping Ryan Pace, and he's just been expecting the Bears to do something stupid every time they make a move. But I want to thank all of our fans for tuning in tonight. Also, one announcement real quick is that make sure next Thursday, a week from tonight, is the first round of the NFL draft. And me and Ryan, along with everybody on the MI6 Sports Network, we are extremely proud and extremely excited to announce that we will be having our second annual NFL Draft Extravaganza on Thursday, April 29th. The show will start, I believe, at either 4 p.m. Pacific time or 5 p.m. Pacific time. We haven't hashed out the time yet, but April 29th, save that on your calendar. MI6 Sports Network's Draft Extravaganza coming at you. We're going to be streaming the draft, and also we are going to be live reacting to each and every pick as they come in. But one thing we do ask of you guys, the fans that are watching our show, please do not write on our comment section about like the picks that are coming in. If you see them on Twitter from Adrian Wojnarowski, Adam Schefter, whomever, please don't write that in. We want to save the suspense and save the drama and everything. We want that. So if you guys write that in, it will kind of spoil everything. So please do not write that in. And my last final thought is, prayers up to the family of Terrence Clark. Adrian Wojnarowski of ESPN just confirmed the news that it's in fact true that Terrence Clark, the freshman phenom out of Kentucky, passed away today in a tragic car accident. Rest in peace to him. Very tragic, very devastating, gone too soon. And I know that his family must be hurting a lot right now. And I, send all my prayers up to his family. And also, folks, we have John Alcorn, who just joined us. John, thank you for joining us, man. You are 2 hours and 20 minutes late to the program, but we still accept you on tonight's show. What's your final thoughts for tonight's show?
First of all, I was working, unlike Zach Wilson, with the San Francisco 49ers. Second here, of course, I can't believe I'm saying this for one of my final thought. I liked one of the picks, I'll say, about the Denver Broncos for that Ryan had. Of course, final thoughts, like you say, we to it, but just be very extra careful. I'm going to make sure on my part, I'm going to delete Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter for the night of the show, just because Twitter, they like to unveil that. And again, y'all just be very careful. Like we say, we mean this like very nicely because we want to see the reaction when Isaiah Leung has to take Mac Jones. You hear that here, but again, y'all, thank y'all for watching. And John Elway, you're on my last nerve here, buddy.
We all can't wait for Isaiah to cry on air. That will be a sight to behold.
Oh, I got his reaction right here, folks. I got his live reaction here. This would be. We got a couple new stuff in here, so this would be Isaiah's reaction to Zach Wilson not being drafted by the San Francisco 49ers.
No! 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 No!
Couldn't agree more with you know who, but again, thank y'all so much for tuning in.
I guarantee you my reaction will be even worse if Mac Jones is indeed the pick for my San Francisco 49ers. But guys, once again, it's been a terrific show. Thank you so much for tuning in to tonight's episode of Wild Sports Talk. We really appreciate you. If you guys have your mock draft, feel free to comment it down below in the comment section, and we will read it and react to it in the comment section. But once again, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Rest in peace to Terrence Clark. Terrible tragedy today in Los Angeles. Prayers up to him or to his family as they are going through a really, really difficult time right now. But once again, guys, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Stay healthy, stay safe, and we will see you guys back on here for No BS on tomorrow night. Have a great night, everybody.